Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, General Esperon.
Good afternoon, Madam Justice.
Am I clear to you?
Yes, very clear, Your Honor.
Let's start. This is a follow-up of the question of the Chief Justice to ASG Galandines. Are we not experiencing the same red scale era now?
Perhaps,
The McCarthyism?
perhaps there are similarities. In the 1950s, the communists have just invaded Korea, and there were other activities of the communists in other areas. But the similarity ends there. There was indeed a threat from armed communists.
No, that situation now, is it not the situation here in the Philippines now?
Now we have an anti-terrorism act that has so many safeguards, and it is built on it is aimed at protecting ourselves from groups that would inflict upon us violent extremism.
When you say ourselves, people as a general.
We are referring to terrorists, Your Honor.
People, protection to people as a general against the activities of the terrorist.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. National Security Advisor, General Esperon, can you explain the evolution of the terrorism in the Philippines right after World War II in the Philippines?
That is indeed quite a long way to go, but I can only say that
in a short, in a short brief discussion.
I would rather start first with the activities of the first terrorist actions. I would go back to 1994 when a group of terrorist veterans from the Afghanistan wars attacked the town of Ipil in Zamboanga del Sur, where they burned commercial establishments, killed several people. That was led by Abdurrajak Janjalani,
Okay.
became the original emir of the Abu Sayyaf group in the Philippines. He was succeeded by his brother, Gaddafi Janjalani, who would later on lead the kidnapping of tourists from Dos Palmas, Palawan,
Okay.
2001. And at that time, in the year 2000, well, if we remember 2001, September 11, 2001, that was the bombing of the World Trade Center. Indeed, at that time, terrorism of the violent extremist variety had started worldwide. And we know that there had been manifestations or actions of terrorists in the Philippines, including, of course, such things as the bombing of Davao City last September 2016 in a market, night market. Earlier than that, we have seen the bombings of
The Rizal bombing, the December 30 bombing of many years ago.
yes, and
Was that during your time or before your time or after your time? As AFP chief.
2008, I happened to have operated against that group that kidnapped people from Dos Palmas and brought them to Basilan. I was transferred from North Cotabato to as brigade commander to be brigade commander again in Basilan. And so when I became chief of staff, I ran after Kadapi Janjalani. And we got so many of them. But after getting him, some other leaders came up. And up to now, there is still an active a terrorist group in Sulu and other parts of Mindanao. We, of course, remember the 2016 attack of Snelon Hapilon, who was the leader of the Abu Sayyaf in Basilan, and they attempted to take over the city of Marawi. That is probably the most memorable terrorist attack that we have had. After that, there were a series of suicide bombing activities. We have had 2 of them in Sulu, and we are still hunting down probable suicide bombers. And so that is the ISIS, or the Islamic State in Syria and Levant variety. But we have another local terrorist group, which we now call the Communist Terrorist Group. They have become, while the Communist Party of the Philippines is indeed a legal organization after the repeal of Republic Act 1700, they continued with their armed rebellion or armed struggle. And that brings in the New People's Army, or the element of violence. And indeed, they have been conducting violent activities, intimidation, and extortions, arsons, and other types that would greatly influence public safety. That, in short, is terrorism in the Philippines, Your Honor.
So, from your relating the story to us, it would seem that the general impression is you only have 2 great and 2 important terrorist groups, and I will not, the NPA, and the other one are those extremists who conducted bombing, who exploded. I am not saying from the south, but these are the identified groups. Is that true, Ms. General Esperon? There are only 2 major groups?
Generally, Your Honor, that there are several splinter groups, but just the same, they employ violent extremism.
And these other splinter groups are not yet designated nor proscribed as terrorist groups?
The Abu Sayyaf group has been proscribed by virtue of Human Security Act. But now we are proscribing the CPP-NPA, and others have been designated by virtue of the Anti-Terrorism Act.
So
CPP-NPA is designated pursuant to United Nations resolutions, as well as their designations by supranationals or other countries, including the United States, the European Union, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. I'm talking about the CPP-NPA, Your Honor.
how about individuals? Are there individuals already designated as terrorists in the Philippines?
I do not want to preempt the Anti-Terrorism Council because I have not seen yet the publication today or tomorrow of the designation of several persons connected with the CPP-NPA. But we will do that.
Are you at liberty to name these people, since there have been designations already made?
Well, there have been there is a resolution of the Anti-Terrorism Council, but until we have published this in local papers, we will not name them publicly, Your Honor. Tomorrow, they will come out in the papers.
Tomorrow. It's very timely that we are having this questioning of the National Security Advisor. So, since you dated these activities in sometime in 1990s, so when our Constitution was approved in 1987, there is no such thing as terrorism. Wala pa ba noon? Esperon?
We simply called them insurgents, but as their tactics, techniques have evolved, it's now very clear that they're employing violent extremism, and we all know that they are for the violent overthrow of this democratically elected government and this democratic system of ours in the Philippines. They are doing it through the use of the New People's Army, and this is led by a party with so-called shields, which they term as National Democratic Front. I can play now, Your Honor, if you would want to know the organizations that are involved. I can play now the video of their number one red tagger.
Number one red tagger. We would appreciate a general if you can show us the video.
Yes, Your Honor, it is only 2.5 minutes of a speech of Jose Maria Sison.
Okay.
Last April 24, 2021, on the occasion of the 47th anniversary of the National Democratic Front. Your Honor, may I be allowed to share my screen?
Sige po, General.
Secretary Esperon.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed with your screen sharing.
Yung kay Joma. Heretofore, nobody has confirmed to us what we have all suspected, that there are underground mass organizations. And now here comes Jose Maria Sison telling us all the names of these organizations, which we know are the ones in open organizations, legal organizations, or have created organizations to support the armed rebellion. I think there's a technical problem, Your Honor, but it's getting on.
OSG, which computer will you use for screen sharing?
Mag-name siya ng organisasyon.
Ano?
Is it the computer of Attorney Hernandez?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Your Honor, we will be using the computer of ASG Bernard Hernandez, Your Honor.
We will be granting him a co-host account right now. And adding him on Spotlight right now. Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you. We will have to migrate to the account of the Solicitor General so that we will be able to share the screen.
ASG Hernandez, I cannot put you on Spotlight if your video is not turned on.
we will migrate to the account of the Solicitor General?
Also, this current account po.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
The account of the Solicitor General is now a co-host. You may start to share screen.
Dear compatriots and friends, my Filipino compatriots and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines and the Friends of the Filipino People in Struggle, or Friends of the NDF-P, for inviting me to serve as a keynote speaker in the celebration of the NDF-P 48th anniversary celebration. I wish to speak on the important role of the NDF-P in the Filipino people's struggle for national liberation and democracy since its founding on April 24, 1973. In the process, I shall cite the NDF-P's struggles, sacrifices, and achievements. The NDF-P's most important role in the democratic revolution is to arouse, organize, and mobilize the broad masses of Filipino people in their tens of millions and to seek international solidarity, support, and cooperation. For the purpose, it encompasses 18 allied organizations representing all patriotic and progressive classes and sectors of Philippine society belonging to various political tendencies, ethno-linguistic communities, and religious beliefs. The allied organizations include the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, Revolutionary Council of Trade Unions, Katipunan ng mga Samahang Manggagawa, Pambansang Katipunan ng Magbubukid, Malayang Kilusad ng Bagong Kababaihan, Kabatang Makabayan, Katipunan ng Gurong Makabayan, Makabayang Samahan, Pangkalusugan, Liga ng Agham para sa Bayan, Lupon ng Manananggol para sa Bayan, Artista at Manunulat para sa Sambayanan, Makabayang Kawaning Pilipino, Revolutionary Organization of Overseas Filipinos and their families, Christians for National Liberation, Cordillera People's Democratic Front, Moral Resistance and Liberation Organization, and Revolutionary Organization of Lumads.
Your Honor, it is a 1-hour videotape, but we will stop at that since Mr. Season has already named the affiliate underground organizations of the National Democratic Front, whose primary role is to arouse, organize, and mobilize tens of millions to support their so-called National Democratic Revolution. If I may I again still, in addition to that, present another video of Mr. Season in 1987, where he named the legal organizations that are with them in the National Democratic Revolution, also known as armed struggle or armed rebellion to overthrow government. This is dated 1987.
Diba amorphous parang hindi naman siya ma-identify.
There are three processes by which the Philippine Revolution is to be advanced. These include the building of the Communist Party of the Philippines, the building of the new People's Army, and the building of the National Democratic Front. The Communist Party of the Philippines was established on December 26, 1968 as the Marxist-Leninist vanguard party of the working class. This party is supposed to be the standard bearer of the working class, which is that class that is the most progressive, productive, and political force in the Philippines. It is true that a minority class, especially only the party which represents it, cannot win the Philippine Revolution all by itself. At any rate, even while there are the forces of armed revolution, there are the legal democratic forces in the Philippines. The biggest of these is Bagong Alyansang Makabayan, or Bayan in short. It has a membership of more than 2 million members in more than 1,000 member organizations. Its biggest component organizations are Kilusang Mayo Uno, which is the labor center, the Pambansang Kilusang Magbubukid, which is the Kilusang Magbubukid ng Pilipinas, or KMP, Gabriela, the Women's Alliance, League of Filipino Students, Alliance of Concerned Teachers, Cadena, and so on. As I have earlier pointed out, Partido ng Bayan, founded last August 30 and 31, was an outgrowth of Bayan, the big coalition.
That is the short video of a longer version in 1987, Your Honor. And if I may continue with that, what Season was referring to as formation of international solidarity, indeed, there is now the International League of People's Struggles that meets every year, presided over by Jose Maria Season. And their last meeting was in Hong Kong last 2020, and 75 member organizations from the Philippines attended that meeting, including members from the Alliance of Concerned Teachers, Anak Bayan, KMU, Bagong Alyansang Makabayan, Gabriela, and several others. Please open up International League of People's Struggles, and you will see all the names of these organizations from the Philippines, all 70 of them or more. And so, with these presentations, Your Honor, I can only say that if there is such a thing as red tagging, the master red tagger is Jose Maria Season. On our part, we are simply informing the public. This is, of course, what we would call now as truth tagging. Thank you, Your Honor.
Just sorry.
Yes. If you say that is truth tagging, General, and that's not red tagging,
Yes, Your Honor. The red tagger is Jose Maria Season.
and then you follow from that?
for purposes of public information, so that we will not be misled by this movement or triad of the CPP-NPA-NDF that would want to wrest or get for themselves state power through armed rebellion, or what they call armed struggle.
If
It-
what you say,
3 years, and the effects of this armed rebellion has told so much on matters of resources that we have expended on it, and on the sufferings of people in the countryside where they operate.
can you expound on that, Mr. General Esperon? In fact, I will be asking you on the effects of these activities
Honor, thank you.
on the life of the people, on the spending of the resources of the government to quell this terrorism. Narinig niyo po ako?
May I be clarified on the question, Your Honor?
Ano nga po yung effects, the general effects on the life of the people, the amount of government resources to be able to quell these terroristic activities?
Well, Your Honor, starting with the main force that we use, the armed forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police. For the armed forces, we have now 11 divisions. One division, by the way, the newest division in Sulu is dedicated to going after the Abu Sayyaf. But the 10th division in Baho also goes after them because they have bombed Baho City, and the area of the 6th division, also in Cotabato, covers several areas where the Abu Sayyaf and its and similar organizations operate. In other parts of the country, we have 9 other divisions of the Philippine Army. Most of them are engaged in quelling this armed rebellion by the CPP-NPA. So, on the part of the National Police, they also join us in our operations, especially now in the National Task Force ELCAC, because we are with them, the armed forces and the Philippine National Police, together with the local governments, are the main organizations that are clearing the guerrilla bases of the CPP-NPA-NDF. So, I do not know how you would want to calculate the cost of that in terms of operations by government. And the other branch, the other executive, the other departments, of course, have their share in addressing the problems of this insurgency, including, of course, land reform. We have the Department of Agrarian Reform. We have basic services from DSWD, and employment matters from DTI, DOLE, TESDA, and we can even include the Department of Foreign Affairs that goes after their tentacles or their elements that are operating in Europe primarily. And so the cost is tremendous. But the more telling effect would be on the people themselves in the countryside. I have been battalion commander in Agusan. I have worked the conflicted areas in Central Luzon and Cagayan in the 70s, and I have known the effects of this insurgency nationwide. I am not an economist, but I will venture to say that if there is no insurgency in the Philippines, our gross national product would easily go up by at least 1%. But I think the more reasonable estimate would be about 2% minus or taken out from our gross national product. What would be more telling, of course, again, what is telling again is that families are divided into separate organizations. They destroyed the basic social unit of the Philippines, the family, because the father, the mother, and the children are organized into separate organizations.
General, was the government effective in the fight against terrorism before the Human Security Act was passed?
May I be clarified again, Your Honor?
Was the government effective in the fight against terrorism before the passage of the Human Security Act?
Well, I have been the Chief of Army Commander and Chief of Staff for 2 years. We had our accomplishments. I must say we were. But did we eradicate insurgency or terrorism? It must not with just downgrading their capabilities. Our campaign must end with totally eradicating these scourges to the nation. In European countries as well as in other nations, it is perfectly all right to be a member of a communist party. But they do not have there a component that is pursuing the armed struggle or armed rebellion. And so, therefore, in Europe, they can always be parts of parliament and even form their groups. But here in the Philippines, they masquerade themselves because they do not want to admit that they are part of a triad that is pursuing armed rebellion and want power for themselves.
General, we had Human Security Act before, and now we have this law, Anti-Terrorism Act. What is the reason why the government shifted from HSA to ATA? Of course, as a National Security Advisor, alam mo po ang rason.
Indeed, Your Honor, we recommended in the Security Cluster Group that we must come up with a better anti-terrorism act. For the Human Security Act, it was more concerned on protecting the terrorist himself, but not giving your law enforcement and your security forces the right tools to defeat terrorism. For example, if you would arrest a terrorist and later on you would be proven that you have arrested the wrong person, you would be fined 500,000 pesos a day. And so it became a disincentive to our law enforcement officers. Although it was a measure it was a safeguard. But you prevented your law enforcement people from performing their act because you did not tell us where to get the 500,000. Do you get that from the salary of a soldier whose salary is about 25,000 per month? Or from the organization, probably? If you are adjudged to be wrong in picking up one person for 10 days, that's 5 million, Your Honor. Many of our units don't have that kind of operating funds. And so, we are glad that the Senate, the chairman of the Committee on Defense, Security, and Peace and Reconciliation took the cudgels and sponsored and became the principal author of this Anti-Terrorism Act. I'm referring to Senator Panfilo Lacson. He was joined, of course, by the other members of the Senate and later on by the House, which passed this anti-terrorism law, 11479.
Yun lang po ba ang rason?
Oh, well,
Military aspect of it?
not only that.
that the soldiers will not be able to defray the 500,000 a day fine?
Well, that was
We
in
need to restructure the human security law,
that
and
was
amend it entirely, and come up with a new anti-terrorism act.
well. We also want to come up with a new law because the terrorists have become dynamic. They have changed some of their tactics, techniques, and organizations. We have to address foreign terrorists. We have to address foreign funding. We have to be dynamic also, Your Honor. And we believe that this Anti-Terrorism Act is just appropriate for the times. We have the weakest anti-terrorism law if we refer to the Human Security Act in this region or in the world. This is one reason probably that we are number 10 in the Global Terrorism Index. Number 10.
Wow, number 10.
93 countries. And 60% of that violent terrorist act is contributed by the New People's Army.